Welcome back, everyone, to Lawyers, Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we talk about the law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. I am back with Katy Harris. Katy, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Mac?
Good, good. Thank you so much for coming back. And we're going to get right into it because now we're irregular and we like to just get into it to talk to people and educate them about topics that we find compelling and important, especially focusing on resolving conflicts and disputes in people's lives. We're both lawyers. We work with children a whole lot, especially with their parents,
hmm
because we are mediators trying to help people resolve their conflicts outside of court. And before I proceed, of course, I want to share my screen to remind people a little bit about you. And I'll start off with your website,
hmm
Mediation Matters Midlands.co.uk. And folks can check you out there where you have been doing this kind of work close to my heart for many years. And folks can, oh, and I see that Penny Ruth Willis is also on your site, and
Yep.
she was recently on the podcast talking about a whole lot of very important things. Also, want to remind people that you are one of the folks setting up the Bridging the Gap Conference 2026. That's going to be happening next month, March 19th
Yeah.
to 20th. And so, folks who are into the business of conflict resolution or helping children, helping families navigate divorce, separation, custody, anything dealing with psychology, they should attend and go learn from each other, with each other, and on how to do the best work. So that's at bridgingthegap2026.co.uk. And that website will be on the show notes so people can check it out if they are interested. And I believe that tickets are still available to attend. Is
We-
that correct?
We've still got tickets available, but they are selling fast and we do have a limit. So we need to give final numbers by the 11th of March. So yeah, if you want tickets, then head over to the website. Or if you've got any questions, just drop us an email. Happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. And so before we continue on with our topic today, that's going to be talking about the issue of time, the factor of time in conflict resolution and dealing with children, and why delay is not a way to do things when
hmm
courts are involved. Before we get to that, please tell us where you are right now, because I understand last time you were on the podcast, you were traveling, I think somewhere in Africa, I forget where, but
Yep.
now you're on another continent. So tell us what's the latest.
I'm in Mexico, so I am over in Playa del Carmen, so I'm not over in Puerto Vallarta, which is good. You may, however, be able to hear the pool table next to me because I couldn't get in the room and on the internet, so I am downstairs in the lobby. But everything is calm here. Bit of police presence, bit of military presence, but everything's calm and everyone's just going about their business as normal. So we're all
Yes.
good. Fingers
Yes,
crossed.
yes, yes. So stay safe. I know we all know what's going on in Mexico right now, in parts of Mexico, I should say. I'm in Texas, just north of Mexico, and so the news has been all about what's happened. But you're safe and sound, and it's really a testimony to modern technology for you to be able to come on halfway around the world from where you typically live, from the UK, to
Mhm.
appear remotely and keep talking about this thing that you really love talking about, which is resolving conflicts that impact children. So let's talk about your recent article, which I think some folks, this will resonate to a lot of people, I believe, because it certainly did with me. And 3 days ago, you wrote on LinkedIn that the most dangerous thing about family court, it is not bias, it's delay.
Mhm.
Okay. And that childhood doesn't pause while we adults are navigating the system. So it
Mhm.
resonated with me because this is something that I've always talked about a lot, which is that time is a factor. It's not just truth, whether or not there's something is true or false. It's not just security, whether or not we're dealing with things that are secure. It's also whether or not something is time sensitive and what we need to do about it. But can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the overall idea, why you wrote this, and what the concepts are that you want people to take away?
I think we spend a lot of time talking about the difficulties in courts, contested cases, issues that we see with those. I think often we focus on the things that we think we can control and where we can do better. And one of the big things is one, I'm a huge advocate for non court dispute resolution at every chance. Where children are involved, the courts need to be the absolute last resort. And we can't stop time. We can't stop time. And a week in our lives as adults is a week, but in a child's life is so much longer. You know, if you've got a 2-year-old and then you've got a 6-month or a year court proceedings going ahead, that's half that child's life
Yep.
spent with parents in conflict. And what we know about humans is we don't like uncertainty. We don't like feeling out of control. If we think back to also the impact that COVID had on children, they could feel the uncertainty, the anxiety with their parents. We had children with slower development, with speech and language delays, with additional mental health worries. All of these things are often caused by uncertainty and a prolonged uncertainty. We don't, as human beings, manage well when we're out of control and when we don't have an end goal. So lots of people that I see where we're currently running a pilot scheme, which is I think what that post was about, as well was the pilot scheme that we're running. So we've got mediators situated in courts, not in the courtroom, in the courthouse. But it allows for the judges and the magistrates to be able to refer clients straight out of the court into mediation because that feels like it's a better solution for them. And actually, sometimes people, all they need from a court is direction. And if the court says go to mediation, people go to mediation. Often they'll bypass it, they'll be given incorrect information. They might be under the illusion that where there's been domestic abuse, we can't manage those cases. They may have been swept up into the system by lawyers that maybe aren't looking out necessarily for their best interests. Conflict creates money for lawyers, and lawyers have targets to reach. So, you know, we just need to be really mindful of what we're doing and how the time is such an issue. And the more cases we have going to court, like your backlogs over in the US is, I think, similar to ours over in the UK.
Yep.
We've got cases sometimes that are waiting, you know, a year for a final hearing. A year in a child's life is too long. A year of two parents in conflict with uncertainty is too long. But also, we need to stop all of these cases going because they're clogging up the courts. They're clogging up the courts for cases where there are care proceedings or, you know, serious safeguarding issues, or where there is domestic abuse beyond a level that it can't be managed in mediation. And those cases need to be seen and need to be heard. And those that aren't serious safeguarding concerns, you know, care cases, anything like that, they need to be dealt with in non-court dispute resolution where the parents retain that control and prioritise their children, because nobody knows their children better than they themselves.
Yep, absolutely. And some points you raised that, speak to me are you mentioned the phrase, the prolonged uncertainty, right? That the longer a case goes, the more likely there are things that will fall apart, things that are beyond our control that will sometimes wind out of control in ways we weren't predicting. And
Mhm.
for a child, to have to continue to live and subsist in that kind of environment, that is what helps take a kid's, childhood away, right? I think you and I will both know of cases where parents spend years in court, but the child themselves spends half of their young, lives as children stuck in mom and dad's drama. And so imagine if there's a divorce case that takes 2 to 3 years, and this child custody is involved, and the child is 5 years old. Well, imagine. I mean, first, second, third grade, from kindergarten on, these years, these formative years are basically all gone because parents are in conflict. And they're in conflict over Christmas break. They're in conflict over spring break, summer vacation. They're in conflict over all these things when the children should be forming memories during those years. But a lot of that just kind of gets really screwed up. And so this is just what I've seen. And so if parents can try to think about time from the children's perspective and
Hmm.
pull that back in and have that be the reason, a reason why they hurry up and get the conflict out of the way, the better off our kids are going to be for it. The
And I
other thing
think
you
we,
go ahead.
sorry, Matt, you go.
Yeah, well, no, no, one point at a time. We'll talk about the billable hour of conflict of interest after,
Hmm.
but please, what do you think about the prolonged uncertainty?
I was just going to say we talked about this briefly when we had Penny join us, and we talked about ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences. We know that divorce falls within that, and it's not the divorce itself that causes that, it's the conflict generally that goes around it, the uncertainty. What we've also got to remember, and I've been there, I've been through the courts. I was petrified. I have never been so frightened in my life of the thought that somebody who didn't know me, who didn't know my children, who didn't know their dad, was going to make a decision about
Yeah,
what was in their best interest. And when we are humans in fear, we're not our best selves. I was
yeah,
not my best self through the whole of that
not
time
rational.
because I was petrified. And that, like, I think we touched on it briefly when we said, you walk into a room and you can feel the energy, and children are like sponges with that. If they're with a parent, or, I mean, the worst cases, so many people are stuck in the situation where they're separated, but they're still in the same house. The child can feel that tension. And even when they're in separate houses, the child is picking up on the adult's anxiety. And it's ongoing. That's where it becomes harmful. We deal with, and I'm an advocate for risk taking and allowing children to risk assess and make decisions and problem solve and all of that. But the benefit of those is in those short opportunities to do so, where there can be a heightened bit of adrenaline and then a solution that comes quickly and reasserts for the child that actually I can control this. This is okay. I can do it again. I can manage the risk. But where there's ongoing uncertainty and there's no reassurance and none of that is coming, that's when we start to get those problems. And as you said, those formative years, these are years where they should be having happy times and happy memories. And there's no human that I know in the world that would say, I'm really looking forward to going to court and have to make a decision for my children.
Yep.
Sometimes it feels even the most anxious people sometimes think, I want to go to court because I don't trust that I can make the right decisions. So lots of different reasons for people to go. But I think we've got to look at what support we are giving um, adults or parents who are separating. What support are they getting, and how are we helping them to navigate this process? How are we enabling them to keep control of what they can keep control of themselves, rather than allowing them to get swept up into a combative process, which does nothing. It does nothing. It gives an outcome, and then that's it. Here's the answer. Stop. There's no further support. There's no what happens if. There's no this is what's going to happen when. It is literally this is the answer. The end. And it's harmful. It's just really harmful. There's very few cases where court is the answer, but unfortunately, as a society, we've defaulted to, we can't agree, let's go to court, rather than looking at all the other options that are available. And I think this is why I speak about what we do, because people need to start to realize that there are other solutions. I genuinely think people don't realize or understand that they can go to court, or even if they've been to court and they've got a court order, provided they both, certainly over here, I'm in Mexico, but in the UK, whether you've got a court order, you can override that court order yourselves by mutually agreeing differences. You don't have to stick by this court order that isn't healthy for a child, a developing child whose needs change. And I think sometimes people just don't don't understand what options are available. And I just think it's really important that people do have that information and know what choices they do have, even if it's something like arbitration. Do you have arbitration over there, like
Yes,
private court?
absolutely. Of course, private judges.
Yep.
Yes.
So, even consider arbitration, because this is one way to avoid that delay in time, is have a private court hearing. I'm not sure of the costs over in the US, but in the UK, to be fair, if you're paying for lawyers, the cost for arbitration can sometimes be the same as it is to go through the public courts where you've got representation, but it just isn't that lump sum up front and the answer very quickly. It's just prolonged. And that same amount of money is the cost at the end of it, but it's taken a year to get there. And you can't put a price on your mental health, your children's mental health, just all of that anxiety and anguish that people are going through. It needs to be quick, and we have to stop these delays because it's just so unhealthy for everybody.
Yes, yes. So definitely arbitration is a potential solution. Although in family courts, well, in family law, not so much. In the US, the other thing is arbitration still does take some power away from the
Mhm.
participants. It just puts it into an agreed person's hands. However, we always want to dissipate power, right? And in family, who's best, but to get it into the hands of the parents. But certainly, it would speed things up greatly because the court
Yeah.
systems are backlogged considerably. Um, and I think one thing you said is we have to help people know about these alternatives because they're faster. And I think that's the part that falls on our shoulders as professionals.
Mhm.
People don't know, right? This is why we do these videos. It's to help folks know that there are alternatives. It's called ADR, alternative dispute resolution, as it's another option. But if there's a paradigm of call a lawyer that's been exacerbated to death in our societies for generations, call a lawyer as the first response to anytime you have a conflict. Well, no wonder folks are always going down that path first. We're trying to make people realize there's another alternative. It's called call a mediator, right? There are other options, and it's
and,
just not
and
something you hear a lot.
we have, so ours has changed slightly from ADR now to NCDR, so non-court dispute resolution.
Yep.
Um, and the reason for that is because the language is important. Alternatives suggest it's a an alternative, whereas non-court dispute resolution should be like the first option. So
Yep.
we have non-court dispute resolution, and that we do include within that early neutral evaluation. I'm not sure if you have that again over there, and arbitration. Or although arbitration, for anyone who doesn't know, essentially is a private court hearing. You've still got somebody making a decision for you, but it can be done in a couple of weeks or in a month's time. Whereas public court hearings, you're talking a year usually for an outcome. We're getting slightly quicker in the UK. We've got some Pathfinder pilot schemes running, which are making things a bit quicker. But we've got to make changes, and I think the biggest thing is societal. It's enabling people with the information that they need so they can make those decisions. So early neutral evaluation, I don't know if you have it over there, but that would be, you can have it alongside mediation if you want to. So it's having a barrister or a lawyer who has worked heavily in the courts to come in and advise parties what would be the likely outcome if it did go to court. If so, when they're far away in mediation and they're literally, one's over here and one is here,
Yep.
then they can come in and say, listen, if this went to court, you're looking at somewhere over here, right?
Yep.
And then they can work out whether they can then mediate within that smaller framework. They won't give them a definitive outcome because they can't do that, but they can say at least what the likely outcome would be. And again, it just helps to move parties a bit more with that support so that they can move things forward themselves and retain that control. So other things that can be done alongside mediation, bit of extra support, legal advice, all of those things we still recommend. But there's a big difference between legal advice and legal representation, i.e. having somebody who's your voice. And charging you for it. And a solicitor's job is to do the best for their client, which means one solicitor got their lawyered up, the other one's lawyered up, then they're going to keep moving further apart. And again, conflict and disagreement just prolongs it further and further and further. The further apart they are, the longer it's going to take to get a solution, essentially.
Yes. And let me share my screen one more time. Back to
Mhm.
the article you wrote. You wrote, it is one of the reasons we are piloting real time mediation within the court process in Wellingborough. The aim is not to bypass judicial oversight, but to reduce a period families spend in adversarial limbo and contain conflict earlier before patterns harden and children absorb years of uncertainty. And this is one reason years back, me and my business partner at the time had thought up of the idea called instantmediations.com.
Mhm.
The site's still up. Instantmediations.com has evolved, and now it's a lot of the people who joined us are now being moved to another site. But the idea of instantmediations.com was basically, hey, stop waiting, because getting to the mediation table can solve so many problems. But there seemed there seemed to have been, to me anyway, just a massive delay from when people first have a conflict erupt in their lives to when they finally get to the mediation table. Forget court. I'm just talking about getting them to do just a sit down where they're going to talk.
Mhm.
And it became frustrating for me as an attorney, with my family law clients, knowing that if I can just get these people to the table to start talking, we can start
Yep.
opening up, avenues for potential solutions. Not that it's going to work, not that they're going to resolve their differences, but I've discovered that talking more likely than not helps
Mhm.
resolve differences than not talking at all. Right? That's the first thing. You gotta
Yeah.
talk.
When people don't communicate, you're left in the dark,
Correct.
and you're left in a place of fear where you are then anticipating the worst. You're building, 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 and thinking the other person's going to do something worse, and you are escalating it. When communication breaks down, this is the key thing in mediation. What's happened? Lack of trust, breakdown in communication. Every single case. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. So, if we can allow them to communicate, even if it is a safe space where they can address issues that they've got and ask the other person a question. So where it is, little Johnny's got a bruise on his leg, and so the parents withheld the child because they decided that the other person might have hurt the child. Let's just hold the space for the question. What
Yeah.
happened? Why didn't you tell? Like, why didn't you inform me? That's why I worried, because you didn't say anything. Usually you'd have said something. So I, in my head, jumped to conclusions that something was wrong. This is what happens when we don't talk. We have to communicate, because otherwise we fill the gaps. And when you're in a negative space, those gaps get filled with negative answers and negative things that are
Exactly.
going on. And
Self-fulfilling
they
prophecy.
in turn escalate, don't they? And it is
Yep.
literally like it just continues and continues. And I think just having that, I think if people understand that, even if mediation is nothing other than a platform to hold a space, to have a 90-minute or a 2-hour mediation where they can safely say to the other person, even if it's online, like you and I are right now, we're completely safe. We can hold the conversation. If either one of the parties feels overwhelmed and they need to move into separate spaces, we can do that. Allowing them to keep that control, but also you have to imagine. I quite often use the analogy of a fizzy drink, in a bottle, shake it up. If we don't let little bits out at a time, it will explode. So
Yeah.
we have to allow them to let out some of these worries and negative energy so that they can move forward. Sometimes they can't move until they've got over those things. So having that space just to have that conversation and actually to hear from the other person, listen, I'm actually trying to do the same thing as you. I just thought there was a different route to it. That,
Yep.
you know, it's done in an instant. It's done. You've like that one sentence. I'm trying to aim for the same thing, but I just think that there's a different way that I think is better. Let's discuss why my way seems better. Let me understand why you think your way is better, and then let's find a solution. It's just it's so simple, and
Yep.
I love it when, I mean, not obviously not all mediations are that simple, but there are often mediations where we bring two people and they're like, "Well, I just thought that you wanted this," and they're like, "No,
Exactly.
I how long have you been
Exactly.
thinking?
Sometimes
6
people don't
months?
even know what they're arguing about. That's what
Yeah,
we've learned as mediators, right? A lot of
yeah.
times people don't even agree on what the dispute's over. And
Yeah.
I always say, if for nothing else, if for no other reason, the reason you should go to mediation is to at least find out what you're fighting about. Believe it or not, people still disagree about that.
Mhm.
It's kind of funny when people go to court, the judges sometimes ask us if we have stipulations, if we've agreed on some things and what we are still disputing over. Uh, the courtroom is not the place where that should be asked. That should have been asked a long time ago at mediation, so we can absolutely know for sure. Okay, due to time, let's start wrapping it up.
Mhm.
Um, I just wanted to make sure that I brought up that instant mediations, but the pilot program that you're doing in Wellingborough, how's that going? Is that successful?
It's going really well. It's still clunky, because we're trying to change something that has had a process for so long,
Correct.
and it's public sector. They don't like change. So it's going well. The referrals to mediation up until kind of December, we started the pilot in September last year. The referrals were nowhere near as high as they should have been, but there's been a replacement of judge. And although the previous judge was absolutely advocating for mediation to occur, non-court dispute resolution to be available, the new judge, I think, is even more so, and is challenging where legal advisors, for example, still had the understanding that where there was a safeguarding concern or domestic abuse, that they couldn't refer to mediation. And I was like, come on, this is not what's happening. But I can't challenge a legal advisor. It's not my job. But the new judge has said, listen, we're not following what, because we have over in the UK, the president of the family division made a defining order in a kind of a high case that, even when there is domestic abuse, that does not mean that mediation shouldn't be attempted, and non-court dispute resolution should be
Yeah.
attempted at all opportunities. That was his statement.
Yeah.
So the new judge is really pushing on that as well. So really helpful. We're getting some really positive data as well, because of course we're only coming now towards the end of some of those mediations referred to us in October. So the statistics we've now got of how successful mediation has been in those cases, I think is going to be the the um the outcomes will speak for themselves, I think.
Gotcha.
So I think we're on track for currently around 90+% of cases referred have made a full resolution and mediation.
Wow.
So pretty good going.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that. So the final thing I'll say to add to all of this is the discussion about technology. I'm big legal tech and ODR person, right? And so I believe that technology can
Yeah.
help resolve conflicts. And typically, we only talk about online mediation or Zoom mediation or using technology in terms of the security it might provide, in terms of the accessibility it might provide, in terms of just helping people get to the table and having the AI even, provide uh, information so people don't have to worry about whether something is true or false in mediation. But
Mhm.
as you wrote, one of the other factors that we can think about in terms of technology as well is time. And so, can technology help speed the process up and save us time and remove the delay problem that we've all been having? So, that's my big belief. And that is that, yes, this is another component to this whole discussion that can help speed up the process so that mediations become more instantaneous. We all have a smartphone in our pockets that potentially is a new mediation room where anywhere you are in the world, anytime, basically, you'll be able to find a mediator who's willing and all hours of the day or night to be able to instantly come on and help you mediate with the other side if they're willing to as well. That's
Mhm.
my big dream. My hope is that folks don't have to continue going days, weeks, even years for resolution to the conflict. They can literally have a conflict and resolve it in a matter of hours. And I think
Mhm.
technology now gives us that possibility.
Yeah. I think definitely this is a great idea. I think what we just have to be wary of with that is I think you can start to unravel disputes. My worry would be that people would rush to find a resolution that day or in those moments. And then we question whether it would have the ability to have the longevity that we want for them to have rather than hitting bumps along the road. So I think absolutely starting um, mediation and and discussions on negotiations as soon as possible always has to occur as quickly as it possibly can. But I do think it's important we don't necessarily rush to
Yeah.
full outcomes because we want people to be able to do it in their own time, have time to reflect, make a decision, work out any problems, solve those problems, have a kind of contingency for the what ifs. But yeah, absolutely. I think if we can start those early discussions as soon as
Yeah.
possible, it will resolve so many more problems. It will
Yeah.
just
Oh,
prevent
oh,
those
and I
problems
didn't
occurring.
say that they're going to resolve. I'm just saying to get them talking. If they can start talking, you open up the bridge of communication. And I
Yeah,
think that goes a long way. And by the way, you know how many people have resolved their own cases by just talking through
yeah.
the mediator, and then we recess, and then when we come back, they've already resolved their differences.
Because it opens the
Just
doors of communication
exactly.
again, doesn't
Just
it?
by opening the door of communication. That's the key.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Kathy Harris, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you want to add before we close out to keep folks current on the latest with you and the latest with going against the delay problem that we've been having?
Not really. I think just, reach out. Non-court dispute resolution or alternative dispute resolution is always going to be the best way to start. Even if you don't reach a resolution, then the court's is always there as a backup. It's not going to vanish just because you've
Exactly.
mediated. So, look at all of those options first and then rely on the court. And you can do the two together. So yeah, it's not either or. It can be done at the same time, exactly as we were doing on the court pilot. The courts are still there in the background. There's still a case open for them to return if they're not able to reach resolutions. But mostly, as I said, 90% I think is roughly where we are at the moment of full resolutions. These people were in court waiting for someone else to make a decision and they've come to mediation and we're like a couple of months down the line, they've got full resolutions. So absolutely, look at the options, know what the options are, give a mediator a call, find out what their availability is, how they can help, make sure you find somebody that works for you and just, use that space, use that person to hold that space and have those conversations.
Awesome. All right. And so the best way people can get a hold of you, go ahead and let us know.
Yes. So I'm on LinkedIn, say Katy, Katy, and then Harris. I the email address is info@mediationmattersmidlands.co.uk. So it's a bit of a long one.
Mhm.
Bridging the Gap conference is also online. So that's www.bridgingthegap2026.co.uk. I think that's everything. I think that's all of my options. So yeah, drop us a message. We're also on Facebook, so feel free to drop us a message through there as well with Mediation Matters Midlands or Bridging the Gap. Either or, you can find us on social media.
All right. Yeah. And I think this is the first recording I've ever done with somebody sitting by a pool table.
Can you hear it?
Oh, don't worry. Technology is gonna remove the sounds. Don't worry. But if anybody, I was hearing it live the whole time. But look, the weirder the location, the better because I like to show that
There
we
we
can
go.
truly work with parties and work with professionals from anywhere we are.
We can anywhere, even next to
All
a
right.
pool table.
All right. Harris, thank you
Thank
so
you
much for
so
coming on
much.
the LMI podcast. And everyone, check this video out and all the other ones on the YouTube channel, lmipodcast.com. Also is the name, part of the LMI network. All right, everyone, take care until next time. Bye bye.
Thanks, Mac.